Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Megillah, pages 21 through 27, Chaf Aleph through Chaf Zayin. 21. Tana Rabbanan, Ba'Torah Echad Koreh ve'Echad Mitargem, that the proper procedure during the reading of the Torah in the synagogue is that one person is the Bal Koreh, is the official reader, and one person serves as the Mitargem, the translator into the Aramaic, into the vernacular. However, what you're not allowed to do is to have two people translating simultaneously because that cacophony of sound is unintelligible. But when it comes to the recitation of the Hallel on the festival days and the reading of the Megillat Esther on Purim, you could have even 10 people reading and 10 people translating. That we do not concern ourselves with the issue of the cacophony of voices being unintelligible. My time. Oh, so why? Why is it that when it comes to Hallel and Megillah, we take a relaxed attitude? Well, because these are very beloved mitzvot, people want to focus their attention and are able to distinguish between various voices and sounds. So we see here then that certain mitzvot were very cherished, especially certain liturgical mitzvot. Purim being a joyous holiday, the reading of the Megillah was one such mitzvah. Hallel, recited on Chanukah and Sukkot, and the first day of Pesach and the Shavuot, also was a cherished mitzvah. Chafbet, 22. Zeh haklal, kol yom sheyesh bo musaf, ve'eno yom tov korin arba'a. So, the question is how many aliyot are there on the various special occasions in the Jewish calendar? There are 3 aliyot on Mondays and Thursdays and Shabbat afternoon, and there are 7 aliyot on Shabbat. However, what about on days which are important but not the most important? Notably, days when there's a Musaf, like Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, and intermediate days of festivals, Chol HaMoed, Pesach, and Sukkot, but they're not Yom Tov days. There's no Yisur Malacha. On those days, there's going to be 4 aliyot, as opposed to Yom Tov when there are 5 and Yom Kippur when there are 6. Chav Gimel, 23. Yom Tov ma'acharin lavo, ma'acharin latzet. On Yom Tov, when it comes to synagogue worship, we arrive late and we leave early. Yom Kippur ma'acharin lavo, ma'acharin latzet. And Yom Kippur, we arrive early and leave late. Shabbat ma'acharin lavo, ma'acharin latzet. And Shabbat, arrive early and we leave early. So what's the reason for all this? The answer is very straightforward. On Yom Tov, you are busy preparing your holiday feast, your meal. And so therefore, arriving in the synagogue will be delayed because of your kitchen activities before you get to the synagogue. So on those days, Yom Tov days, me'acharin lavo, you'll get there late. On Shabbat, you can't cook. On Yom Kippur, you can't cook. So you can get there early. There's no synagogue, there's no kitchen activity prior to synagogue worship. What about in terms of leaving? Well, on Yom Tov, you want to eat your Yom Tov feast, so get out of there early. Leave the synagogue early. On Shabbat, you also want to eat your Shabbat meal, so leave early. But on Yom Kippur, there's no meal to eat. It's a fast day, so therefore stay late. So as it turns out, Yom Kippur, you're in the synagogue for the longest stretch. You arrive early and stay late. On Shabbat, it's a quick in and a quick out. And on Yom Tov, there's a late in and an early out. So the Yom Tov, ironically, has the shortest synagogue service because you have food preparation and food consumption. Chaf Daled, 24. If a Kohen has blemishes on his hand, he should not lead the priestly benediction, the Birkat Kohanim, in the synagogue. Why not? Because people are going to look at him and they're going to notice something funny about this guy, and they'll stare at him and distract him, and it'll cause a commotion in the synagogue and be disruptive. So therefore, he should not lead the Birkat Kohanim. Gemara says, Zavlagan, said Kapav, a person who's a Zavlagan, which means they have tears coming down their eyes on a regular basis, that person should also not do Birkat Kohanim. Vimdash biro mutar. However, if this person was known in the community and people are accustomed to seeing this person and their atypical physical features, then it's not a problem. So as long as no one is going to be distracted because they're accustomed to seeing this peculiarity, it's no longer peculiar, then it's okay. Chafei. Mishnah tells us, Haomer al kan sipor yagiu rachamecha meshat kenoso. If a person were to say as part of the prayer service, that God's mercies extend to the bird in the nest, we tell that person to be quiet. We silence that person. So this was in an era when the liturgy was not entirely fixed, and there was a certain measure of flexibility that the precentor, the chazan, had in terms of the content of the prayers. And if somebody said this or that thing that was objectionable, we would silence the prayer leader. One of those objectionable things is that God's mercy extends to the bird in the nest. Now clearly this is referring to the mitzvah of shiluach haken. However, what's so problematic? If in fact the Torah extends its mercies to the bird in the nest, why can't you say such a thing? The Gemara gives several answers. One, because it causes jealousy among the creations of the world, in the sense that why should God be merciful to the birds but not to other species on this earth? Alternatively, you're turning the decrees of God into mere humanitarian gestures, merciful acts, that we should not view the laws of the Torah as matters of compassion necessarily, although they might in fact be matters of compassion, but rather we are to observe them as decrees from above, heavenly decrees. And so if you just were to say that the mercies extend to the bird, that takes it out of the realm of heavenly decree, divine law, and just to the realm of humanitarianism, and we don't want that to be the focus. Chavav. Tana Rabbanan. Tashmishi mitzvah nizrakin. Those items which are used in the performance of a mitzvah can be discarded in the trash. Tashmishe kedusha, however, those items which are used for a sacred purpose, nignazin, are to be buried or put away in the genizah. Ve'elahem tashmishe mitzvah. What are the items that are mitzvah items? Sukkah, lulav, shofar, tzitzit. All these performative rituals, they're not kadosh, they're not holy, but they were used for mitzvah purposes. They can be discarded, although in a reasonably dignified fashion. Ve'elahem tashmishe kedusha. But what are those things that have to be buried, put in the genizah, which are tashmishe kedusha? The luska me sefarim tefillin mezuzos. The tikshel sefer Torah nizrakin shel tefillin. The containers, the receptacles in which we put a Torah, tefillin, mezuzah, these are sacred items that have God's name. And so the items themselves are kadosh, but the tashmishe kedusha are the receptacles which are used to carry them. Chaf Zayin, 27. Are you allowed to sell an old Torah to buy a new one? A synagogue may have an old Torah, it's been around 40, 50 years, it's still kosher, someone might want to buy it, but the synagogue would prefer to have a new Torah. Can you sell the old one to have revenue needed to buy a new one? So, Kevin Maliba Isser, shall we say that since one is not going up in holiness because you're going from one Torah to another, that it should be forbidden? Or maybe since there's no way to go up in holiness, this is not objectionable. So the Gemara offers two possibilities. Can you sell a Sefer Torah which is older for the sake of a newer Sefer Torah? And the Gemara again theorizes based upon Malim V'Kodesh Ve'in Maridin, maybe yes and maybe no. Everyone have a great week.